Does your business provide a quality service or product? If the answer is yes, then there is a combination of tactics that can be customized to fit your unique business that makes your business super profitable, creates wealth, and makes a difference in the process. I know this because I've built a few tiny businesses to more than $70 million. You're listening to the Entrepreneurs Radio Show, conversations with self-made millionaires and high-level entrepreneurs that will grow your business. Hey, it's Travis Lane Jenkins. Welcome to episode 111 of the Entrepreneurs Radio Show, a production of RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com, where each and every week I connect you with rockstar entrepreneurs that explain their journey to success and what the key principles were to finding their high level of success as an entrepreneur. Now, what I really want you to see is that they're ordinary people that have gotten extraordinary results. Translation, you can do the same thing. Now, before I tell you who our guest today is, I have a question for you. If you had complete financial freedom and you had the time freedom to do whatever you wanted to do, how would your life change? Would you pursue other passions? Would you start a charity? Would you spend more time creating incredible memories with families, or join masterminds where you could be surrounded with brilliant, like-minded people? Or would you travel more? Now, I know the answers are different for everyone, although there's one common denominator for all of us, and that is your level of success in your business has a direct correlation to the amount of good that you can do in your life, your family's lives, and other people's lives. Now, since the success of your business is so important to so many people, and I hadn't even listed everyone that a successful business impacts, I'm going to risk being redundant and repeating something that I say a lot, and that is find a mentor. Find someone that has already built successful businesses that can tell you what you're missing. This is one of the secrets to fast forwarding your success in having those type of things I just described. Now, today I'm going to introduce you to John Jantsch. John is famous on a lot of levels. He's created Duct Tape Marketing, wrote several great books, and so I'm really excited to introduce you to him. Now, before we transition to the interview with John, I want to say thank you to MyShape Lipo here in the United States for the 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Thank you for all of the great feedback, my friend, and the positive words that you shared with me. I really do appreciate you taking the time and letting me know how you feel and the value that it's provided for you. Now, as a reminder, if you have time and you find value in the show, I'd really appreciate it if you'd go and leave us a review and tell us how we're doing. You can review us either on iTunes or on Stitcher. And, of course, I'll recognize you on air and say thank you. One last thing before we get started, there's 3 ways that you can take these interviews with you on the go, through iTunes, Androids, or Stitcher. Just go to RockstarEntrepreneurNetwork.com. Click on either iTunes, Android, or Stitcher right there on the menu bar, and it will take you directly to the podcast where you can subscribe to the show there. So now that we've got all of that out of the way, what do you say we get down to business? Without further ado, welcome to the show, John.
Well, thanks for having me, Travis.
Man, I'm excited to have you here. You've had some pretty impressive accomplishments. I'm wondering, would you mind sharing kind of the backstory of how you got to where you're at today?
Well, not at all, because I think it's very instructional for people to learn, too, that I think a lot of times, somebody sees a book by an author come out and they think, oh, man, that person's just skyrocketed to fame or right, whatever impression they have. And so I do like to start off by telling people I've been doing this for over 25 years.
Right.
And I actually started my own marketing consulting firm 25 years ago after working for an ad agency for a bit. Mm-hmm. And really found that I seem to gravitate towards working with small businesses and small business owners, but was a little frustrated with that because they're, in many cases, can be as challenging as much larger organizations, but don't have the same budgets or even attention spans necessarily.
Right.
So 10, 12 years ago, I decided that what I was going to do to solve that frustration was I was going to create this marketing system, almost a turnkey product approach where I could walk in and say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope we can get. And by the way, here's what it costs. And what was interesting about that approach is that it certainly did solve that frustration of kind of making it up every single time for me. But what I really was surprised was how much it was solving probably the greatest single frustration for a lot of business owners. Buying marketing services is not actually that simple. And so, the big agencies didn't really want to have anything to do with a small to mid-sized firm. And that, of course, is relative. I mean, 10, 15, $20 million firms can't really even attract large agencies necessarily, and so they were consequently buying marketing services from a graphic designer or a PR person or just really anybody they could get advice from and kind of cobbling it together. So this idea of somebody walking in with a very systematic approach, I think, was very, very appealing, and consequently it led to certainly me filling my practice, but also then attracting other independent marketing consultants around the world who wanted to be a part of that, who wanted to be able to use that methodology and point of view in building their practice. And so now we have about 70 duct tape marketing consultants around the world that are working every day with small business owners using the duct tape marketing system.
Right. So now it's a system that really is not tied to one specific industry, right?
No, it's not at all. I mean, my belief is, and sometimes this is takes a little convincing because everybody believes that their business is completely different than everybody else's. My belief is these fundamentals. I mean, every business, regardless of what they sell or if they're B2B or B2C, is after attracting and keeping profitable clients and customers. And so, that's really what our system is about. And I mean, obviously, there are ways that you have to apply it. Everybody has their own lingo. Everybody has market segments. Everybody has ways in which they attract and keep customers, but the fundamentals can be applied to any type of business. And interestingly enough, while we work predominantly with small businesses, I have a lot of very large organizations that over the years have told me these same principles really need to be applied in their industry or their business as well.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Quantify small for you. A small business, what's the revenue range?
Well, I think many of our consultants may work with a startup that is maybe not generating any revenue at the moment or very, very little. But then I think that our sweet spot from this idea of companies that have been able to figure out how to get customers, but now they're having these growing pains or they've kind of plateaued at this point, because it's all been just the idea of the week and very promotion-driven or very sales-driven and really no systematic approach to marketing at all and or strategic approach really even. And so, we find that $1 to $20 million range, obviously, depending upon what you sell, that can be all over the place in terms of complexity. But that range, I think, seems to be very fitting. It's also the point where a lot of organizations grow because a founder, was really kind of the head of marketing, even though maybe they didn't think of it that way.
Right.
And so it's when they grow to a place where they realize, hey, we need strategic marketing folks, not just doers. And I think that's when an organization really starts struggling with, okay, how do we, even organizationally, how do we structure marketing?
Right. So let me qualify strategic from my side, and then you tell me if I've got it right or not, okay? Mm-hmm. So for me, what I find is a lot of people think that marketing is just this one mechanism thing, buy my stuff, which is really kind of the old style of, hey, we're great. Yep. Job quality is number one, buy my stuff. Mm-hmm. And for me, and I teach this in mentor businesses, and in building my own businesses, I found that number one, I need to get crystal clear on who my client is and who they're not.
Right. Sure.
And
sometimes that's easier.
Right. Yeah. Because, there's a whole lot of distraction. I find that a lot of businesses are selling unprofitable business. Right.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay. And then reverse engineering how to get to those ideal clients, and then understanding pricing models within your business, and then setting up campaigns that unfold over a period of time. Is that does that mirror what you teach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we have kind of some core principles. The first one is strategy before tactics, and even though many business owners will call us in and say, I need a Facebook strategy, or I need to get on social media, or I need to figure out advertising. Really, what we do, and that's in some ways what makes this idea of a system so appealing, is we kind of say, wait, maybe you do need all that stuff, maybe you don't.
Right.
But we are going to work on figuring out who makes a narrowly defined ideal customer or client for your business. And you mentioned that unprofitable. Typically what we do is get them to actually rank their customers by profitability. Mm-hmm. And they do often find that there's a 20-25% range of their work that they shouldn't be doing anymore. And so that's very eye-opening. But I think they also start to then figure out, why is a customer profitable? It's not just because they showed up and we solved the need and seemed like they paid us on time. And a lot of times a customer is really profitable because they follow your system. You were very methodical about setting the right expectations. They had the right problem. They were the right size business. I mean, I think that's a lot of times what people don't understand when they think about this idea of an ideal client. Is often hey, we sell accounting, so anybody who needs accounting that is kind of in this range and lives in this community is our target client. And of course, then, as you said, you start listing some of the factors. Well, what about a client that does X? Or what about, have you ever had a client that, the first thing they wanted to do was blah, blah, blah. And of course, then they start saying, oh, yeah, well, we know those are nightmares. We don't want that kind of client. And so consequently, you come to really understanding not only the demographics, but maybe a set of behaviors that you're looking for. And it gets a lot easier to build your business, to build your products, your service offerings, your campaigns, when you know exactly who you're talking to, from a very specific persona, or maybe a handful, because there certainly are legitimate reasons to have 3 or 4 segments. But it sure makes decisions about, should I be on Facebook, where should I advertise, all those types of things a lot easier when you know exactly who you're trying to talk to.
Right. So you're thinking about it from bottom up rather than from, I think most people think about it from top down, and or at least from my perspective. And it's tough to turn down revenue. It's tough to turn down income, revenue into your business. It's the lifeblood of your business. And so it's very intoxicating to want to bring those sales in, but you really, if you ever take the time, and I think most people are so busy being busy that they never take the time to step back and say, wow, the collateral damage that these clients cause within the organization by not following the guidelines, all kinds of stuff, just really causes us to chase our tail and not be at our absolute best whenever we're in the room or whenever we're delivering services for our ideal clients, right?
Yeah, and I think what happens, when you really start getting some leverage with clients is that I've worked with over the years, is when they start realizing that in many cases, those saying yes to those clients that weren't a right fit, not only did they end up being not profitable for a variety of reasons, and you're really running the risk of creating detractors in some cases, right? Because you really weren't able to serve them. And so consequently, not only did they get a bad experience, now they're maybe out there telling everybody else about the bad experience. So that, once somebody gets 1 or 2 of those, they do start saying, okay, yeah, maybe I need to listen to this idea. But the harder point to make, I think quite often, but maybe the more important is opportunity cost. And so when you're chasing or serving clients that aren't right fit, that aren't profitable, you're making a decision about not serving, somebody else, or at least not going after customers that might be the right fit. And I think that and not building your reputation and your authority in that narrowly defined niche. And I think that that's a much higher cost, but it's much harder to see because it's money that's kind of leaking out the back door, and it's not right in your face. But I think it's probably the bigger threat than really the frustration of working with clients that aren't a good fit.
That's an excellent point, and that's kind of the flip side of the problem. Yeah, great point. How long before this light turned on for you?
Longer than it should have been, right? I would say that it was a number of years really in working with dozens of clients and really kind of feeling like every time I would go work with a new client, it was almost like I was morphing into what they thought they needed. Mm-hmm. And I did a real eye-opening thing, and it's now a big part of our methodology from a research standpoint when we're working with a client. But I went out and I sat down with a handful of my clients and I interviewed them on why they chose us, what was one word that really described what we do, what do we do that others don't do, just a handful of questions that we find can be pretty eye-opening. And it was so painfully clear that every single one of my clients defined what I did or the unique thing that we offered solely as kind of what I did for them and not necessarily a consistent point of view at all. In fact, if somebody were from the outside were to come in, they'd say, what business are you really in? Because they're, this client says you do this for them, this client says you do this for them, this client says you do this for them, but there's really no consistent brand at all. You're basically doing projects and kind of morphing into, whatever they pushed you to do. And it really kind of shed light. Not only was I not building a brand, but I probably wasn't becoming really an expert or an authority in any one area, because in order to do that, you really have to develop a point of view and say, this is what we know works, and so my value to you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, is not to just do what you ask me to do, but is to help you understand what you should do. Right. And I think that sometimes that takes some courage and posture, but you do it enough. That's really how you build a true reputation for delivering value.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is you developed enough of a thick skin where you stood up and had the hard conversations early on in the relationship and said, no, this is how it's going to be done. This is our system. This is how we follow it. And I can respect if you don't follow it, but we won't do business together.
Yeah, and while I wouldn't even say thick skin as much as the confidence that, hey, this works. Right. And it's okay if you don't want it. And in fact, it's better if you tell me you don't want it, because now we're not going to dance around for 3 more months with me writing proposals. Yeah, but that's a tough step, John. I've been there myself. Where I want to, I feel like I'm a good person. I want to give them great service. Okay, that's not how we normally do it, but the customer's always right. Let's go ahead and get in there and get that done. And I think though that sometimes that not to coach you on this, Travis, but sometimes that's a sign of is you're not getting in front of the right customers.
Oh no, I agree with you. With you. This was the me of many years ago, and then I finally had to morph to that stage that you're talking about. That's why I know it so clearly, is I had to develop some thick skin and be prepared to hear some things I didn't want to hear or lose some clients by standing up for what I believed in, because I knew what was in their best interest better than them. Yeah. And if they didn't want to follow my advice, then I didn't want to harbor any ill will, but I told them, it's okay. You'll just need to find someone else. And that's what I hear the phase that you went through also.
That's right. And I think one of the ways that you really come to making that easier on yourself, and obviously, everybody talks about content now, but, if you're putting a lot of information out there, you're doing a lot of education, you're telling people this is how we get results, you're showing them, this is how we've gotten results. for people, either in writing about it, recording videos, doing webinars, doing workshops. It's really that process of getting them to know what you do and to trust what you do that has to be in place. That comes before somebody really says, "Hey, come out and tell me what you could do for me."
Right.
When we would get those phone calls, as we started kind of getting more and more notoriety, and we would get those phone calls. I mean, one of the steps in the process was we had to assess how much they knew about us, how much what they were doing in their business. I mean, so we started, part of our lead conversion process was to back people up and get them to jump through some hoops, if you will, make them fill out, tell us about themselves, make them, or at least offer them the opportunity to listen to our point of view, our 7 steps point of view. And really what we found is that the people that either wouldn't take that step probably were never going to be a good customer. But B, when they did take that step, then when we went out and started talking to them about how what we do might work for them, it was really a whole different conversation that we were in many ways in charge of the conversation, and it became more of an internal seminar as opposed to simply responding to their questions or concerns based on what they thought marketing consulting was.
Right.
And I think that you have to be willing to kind of change the context and the entire conversation about what it is that you do by really and I use words like demand that your prospects be educated, and that's probably the wrong term. You need to actually ensure that they're educated by creating an entire lead generation lead conversion system that has those components as kind of their core elements.
Yeah, well, it's gotten easier over the last 8-10 years, right?
That's right. I mean, we used to send people back when all we really had was email. I mean, we would send people PDFs and things of that nature and ask them to read. But now we can send them a series, automatically send them a series of 2-minute videos that end with a form that they can fill out, and depending upon the answers that they give in that form, they get redirected to different information. I mean, so there's no question it has gotten easier. Yeah,
I know you've been doing this a long time, 25 plus years. I was used to the fax era, and setting up appointments and doing in face-to-face presentations and developing, all the educational stuff on site, and so. Geez, things have gotten so much easier that you can ethically condition people to know, like, and trust you before you even get there or before you have a teleconference with them. It's just,
and I think incredible. It's actually become a requirement. I mean, there's still a place for that personal relationship. And, my last book, Duct Tape Selling, I talk about that a lot, that it's essential that you have the mindset and the capability to build personal relationships in most businesses. I mean, if you're selling a $29 product that people buy online all day long, maybe not. But in most businesses, you still have to have that essential relationship building skill and component. I mean, that you can't hide behind marketing automation completely. But what I think has changed is it used to be you had to build that personal relationship first, and then people would start talking to you about what you could do for them in a business relationship. And I think that model is sort of flipped around. Now you have to be able to make the business case, whether it's stuff that they're reading about you, their friends are sharing in their social networks about you. That business case almost has to be made before I'll even let you in. To tell me about what you might actually do for me, and so I think that's a part that a lot of salespeople, in particular, have struggled with of late. Is that instead of just being a relationship builder, you have to really think like a marketer and make this business case, and then we'll talk about whether or not I want to have some sort of personal relationship or business, after that.
Right. And all of it is, or can be set up through automation, which is a dream now, and then taking them through a self-qualifying or disqualifying process, like you mentioned a minute ago, is heaven. Most people don't realize how all of that stuff used to be manual.
Yeah.
Either we'd get them on the phone, or, it's just we didn't have all of these things in place that, I can take someone through a 45-day funnel and either qualify and disqualify them before one of my reps speak with them without ever having a personal engagement in that phase or in those processes. Now, that's not always the best way to do it, but it's just eons beyond where things used to be, and I think emblematic of what you were saying, how things have completely inverted and flipped.
Well, yeah, and I think that I think the biggest thing, a lot of people, because I write about this stuff, I get asked all the time, what's changed in sales and marketing over the last few years, and I think more than anything else, what's changed is buying. And that's what's really dictating a lot of what we have to do now. And by that I mean that that now the buyer, it used to be the buyer would go out and maybe they'd make a couple of inquiries and then they'd call a couple of companies in to come, do proposals or give them ideas on how to solve their problem. And now I think the majority of folks are turning online, are turning to their networks, are finding really answers, right or wrong, to many of their questions and making decisions about who they might want to hire before they're really ever reaching out to anybody that might send a sales rep out. And so one of the things that I think it really, you talk about marketing automation, but I think really probably a sales and marketing process that involves marketing automation is probably a better way of really talking about what we need to do today, because we can no longer guide that or force is probably a better word, that prospect down that linear path that we want them to travel. Mm-hmm. That many of the ways in which they come to find out about our companies are not only out of our control, we don't even know about them. We don't even see them. And so I think that what we have to do is think about the entire journey, and that we're using marketing automation, we're using personal relationship building, we're using content that's put out there in places where we know that our prospects go find content, that we're just kind of organizing their journey in a way, as opposed to really forcing them down a funnel. In fact, I've stopped using the term funnel. I mean, we have for years used a metaphor that we call hourglass.
Say that again. You cut out.
Oh, you've got a train coming through there. It sounded like.
Oh, is that on your end or my end?
It's not on my end.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then I do.
That's all right. There's this great bar in Kansas City called Knuckleheads that is down in East Bottoms. I mean, in a very industrial area, and they bring in this really great music. If you like kind of country folk music, they bring in some great acts. But there's a train track that runs right alongside of the thing, and every concert that you go to, a train will be part of the show.
Yeah, I piped that train in just for sound effects.
That's right. So what I was talking about was that we've really kind of even stopped using the term funnel because to me it focuses so much on kind of driving people down this linear path, and right. We've been using an hourglass metaphor that really certainly borrows from the funnel idea, but puts a lot more emphasis on the customer experience, after they become a customer, because I think that's one of the greatest opportunities actually for lead generation is a happy customer, and
right.
And I think that's a part of the sales and marketing process that often gets very little focus.
Well, following the hourglass analogy, are you using a tool that helps you do that?
Yes. So we, on top of, it's interesting. We use the hourglass really as a framework. So we use it for many, many things. So let's say so fundamentally we use it as part of our CRM. Mm-hmm. So those are the stages. There are 7 stages in our CRM. They are know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. And so we use it in that classic sense that a lot of organizations do to kind of measure, hey, where are people in the various phases or stages of that journey in our business, and so consequently, what are we giving them there? What questions are they asking there? How do we move them to the next stage? But we also use it when we're designing, say, a campaign for a new product. Mm-hmm. So we'll take those stages and we actually flip it over at that point, because we find that you can actually, I think, create a better experience if you start with the end in mind. So instead of saying, okay, what should the email copy be for this great new product, we will start with saying, okay, what do we want people thinking, doing, feeling, saying 120 days after they bought the product? How about 90 days after? How about at the time of purchase? And we actually build our entire campaign or processes or touch points or maybe even add-ons, to the product based on answering those questions. And we find that starting that focus on the customer experience, after they become a customer, it just forces us to create a better campaign and in some cases a better product.
Right. So what is that, HubSpot or something that you're using?
Well, actually, we use Infusionsoft for our CRM, and there's a couple reasons. We have a very large list, and so it's a service that also we use for all of our email, for all of our marketing automation, for our shopping cart, as well as our CRM functionality. So it's a tool that is like a lot of the tools. They only really work as well as you work them, but it covers a lot of our needs and kind of has them all integrated into one. Yeah,
I use that tool also. It's a great tool, although some of their reporting metrics could be improved.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing about any tool like that's a Swiss Army knife, kind of approach is you make just like if you think about a Swiss Army knife, you make a lot of in order for that fork to fit next to the spoon, you probably don't get the best fork or the best spoon,
right.
But they fit together well, and they're both on as part of the kit. But you don't have the best world class of anything because you have to make compromises to make them all work together. And I think that's probably true of what they've tried to accomplish is pretty awesome, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey, what book or program made an impact on you related to business that you would recommend, and why?
Yeah, this probably won't be surprising. I'm certain I'm not the first person to mention this, but I would say it's the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And the reason I say that is I read that book at a point where I was really I had been a small business owner for a while, but I also was really trying to focus on working with small businesses. And it was the first book that to me really I'm a big Peter Drucker fan, but in many ways his language was focused more on larger organizations, and it was the first book that really kind of put it in very simple small business terms, this idea of a system for pretty much everything. And that was when the light bulb kind of went on with me, is that people are talking about systems for accounting and for making the product and for hiring, but nobody's talking about marketing as a system. And to me, that just was the light bulb moment that said, hey, that's the opportunity, and that's what I'm going to build.
I completely agree with you. Marketing systems and business systems are the key things that drive the success of the business. Yeah. Nobody talks about it. Blows me away. Great book. What's one of your favorite tools or pieces of technology that you've recently discovered? And you may have already just said that just a minute ago, but that you'd recommend to other business owners, and why?
I'll tell you one that, because I cover this a lot, and so I'm constantly looking at new tools, playing with new tools. And we, as an organization, we just started using a group chat tool called HIP Chat, HIP Chat, all one word.
Uh-huh.
And it's at its core, it's a group chat tool. So a lot of times I'm traveling and members of my organization are not in the office, so it allows us to stay in touch. It's got a lot of functionality that makes it probably more appealing, and that you can do video chat. You can set up chat rooms. So we kind of have our main sort of newsroom, but then we have, for different segments of our business, we'll have rooms. It's very searchable. It's very taggable. You can tag people in it. So it's almost a quasi-social network that we can build internally. The other thing I like about it is it has a very robust API, and so it's able to. There's a lot of integrations. So, for example, in our page that we call the news stream page, every time I write a blog post, every time somebody writes a comment on one of our blog posts, if somebody mentions Duct Tape Marketing in Twitter, those types of things go right into the news stream. So it just makes it really easy for everybody to at least have a little bit of a look into what's been going on in the world of duct tape marketing.
Really cool. I'm going to have to check that out. What famous quote would best summarize your belief or attitude in business?
Oh, boy. Can I do two?
You bet.
there's a Ernest Hemingway quote that I have a big poster, and I use it in my writing. It's not meant to be literal, but it's write drunk and edit sober. The idea being that just let it rip, write this stuff, feel the passion, be yourself. At least this is how I interpret it. But then let it sit and come back tomorrow and then say, oh, this was too wordy or this didn't make sense. As opposed to hitting send, I think a lot of people get in trouble when they do that. But then another one, and I actually don't know who to attribute this to, so I'm going to give my father credit. Why not? Is fix the problem, not the blame. And I think that whether it's dealing with a customer, an employee, anybody, any certain situation, I think a lot of times we get focused on trying to say, well, you did this or you did that, or why didn't you do this? And everything would be better if you would do X. And I think the approach that is much more productive is to say, okay, what did we learn from this? Let's figure out how to fix the problem instead of worrying so much about why it went wrong. Excellent words to live by. I like both of those quotes. How do people connect with you, John? Well, the easiest way is just ducttapemarketing.com, and that's DUCTTAPE marketing.com. We've got some free ebooks, and I do a podcast as well, and a newsletter that I put out forever. And so there's plenty there to get for free. Obviously, we've got our courses and consulting there as well, but go check it out. And you've got several great books. You want to mention those real quick? So I've written 4 books. Duct Tape Marketing was my first, and that really is the marketing system component. I wrote a book specifically on referrals because I have a lot of people that feel that that's the only way they can generate business, called the Referral Engine, which has also done quite well. My third book was really a more personal book. I just wanted to write about the idea of making work worth it. It's called the Commitment Engine. And it deals into some of the more mental aspects of business and why you do what you do and how to build a business that people want to work in. And then my most recent book is called Duct Tape Selling. Think like a marketer, sell like a superstar. And it was originally targeted for that salesperson that's really having to learn some new techniques in order to get in front of the right people. But it's interesting. I'm finding a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs telling me that they feel like it's really a much more personal way to market as well. And then, ironically, I've gotten a lot of interest, and I'm now starting to get asked to speak in front of large organizations that the marketing and sales folks are saying, "Hey, this is a book that really can teach us how to get marketing and sales on the same page in large organizations." So it's been a lot of fun. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Remember that you can find all the links to the books and resources mentioned in the show notes. Just go to rockstarentrepreneur.network.com. And you'll be able to find the episode and the links that I've placed there for you as well. Now, before I close the show today, I want to read you my quote for the day. And the quote comes from Elliot Wigington. And the quote reads, "Life isn't worth living unless you're willing to take some big chances and go for broke." This is Travis Lane Jenkins signing off for now. And I'm challenging you to take some chances and stop waiting for things to be perfect for you. Perfect, it never arrives. Take that chance and go for it now. To your incredible success, take care, my friend.